This is a very difficult job, and I don't often do this, try to find a link between the crop circles and ancient knowledge. This is what I've been studying, but there is a link between the crop circle and the ancient monument, if only in the landscape, because the crop circles, as you know probably, or maybe you don't, is not a local phenomenon to England. It happens all over the world. But the most active area, the most active country is England. And in England, the most active area is in Wiltshire, around Avebury and Stonehenge. Stonehenge, not so much, but I would say Stonehenge is pretty well the farthest south. So around Avebury, within a 12 to 14 mile radius, is where all the crop circle, most of the crop circle have clustered in the past 30 years. And as you can see here, this area with Silbury, Avebury, West Kennet, Longbarrow, Stonehenge, and it goes all the way to Uffington Castle, wherever there are some very ancient monuments, is where you find the crop circles. Avebury being a village, as you know, you probably know about these things, but I'll just go through it quite quickly in case people are not aware of all the aspects, is that Avebury is a serpent temple, and this is a Stuteley drawing, and a stone circle in the center with two avenues, one pointing east and the other one west, and here you've got the sanctuary, which used to be the head of the serpent. And there are many books written about this, and you know that this is a ritual place, a very important ancient monument, and it is in that area that the crop circle appear. In America, there is also the phenomenon of crop circle, and it is clustered mostly. I would say the most important, the most active area is near the Serpent Mound in Ohio. And that is also, again, here it's an area that had serpent knowledge. It's in Connecticut. And that's where they get the best formation and the most numerous ones. And there is a study group installed there in that area that does quite good work. It does very good work. Silbury Hill, again, we do find them all around it. This is a picture of it in the winter. As you know, Silbury Hill was constructed in a swampy area, and in the water it does flood, so it was placed to be connected to water. It's quite an important aspect. People call it a hill, but to me, Silbury Hill is more like an ancient pyramid. In fact, recently they've been finding, in other countries, you see, they clear the monuments when they've been covered with earth. Silbury Hill is covered with earth, but underneath there is a stone monument. In countries like Mexico, they do clear the debris, they clear the grass and the earth, and they find these ancient monuments. And they are now finding some circular pyramid, which to me are similar to Silbury Hill, and I do feel that it's not just a mound, that actually it was a pyramid structure. And we know that there was a construction at the top. And right up to the early 20th century, they did celebrate on top of Silbury Hill, and quite ancient celebration in my view, with flowers in their hair and eating a fig cake. Now, fig cake is very ancient. It goes back very far back in our tradition. So Silbury Hill is a very important area. I was one of the lucky few who were allowed inside the structure of Silbury Hill just before it was sealed off, because you know that 2002, I think, there was a hole appeared in the structure of Silbury Hill from the top, and caused a lot of distress and weakened the structure, because Silbury Hill was solid. And in 1785, I think that it was dug up. There was a channel through vertically. I can't remember the name of the person who's done that, but they dug to find treasure. They were convinced that King Seal had been buried in there. I don't know who King Seal was. They assumed that it had been constructed as a funerary monument for a king, and that they would be full of treasure. But in fact, what they found is only natural structure, natural elements, earth and whatever. I will describe what it is in a second, but what I'm saying is that there is no structure, there is no chamber inside Silbury Hill. And in 1967-68, there was a tunnel dug vertically, so that weakened the structure quite badly, and these tunnels were not filled in properly. And in fact, when we visited it, we were taken into these archaeological tunnels, and we could see from the inside how Silbury Hill had been constructed. It was constructed in a ritual way. It's quite interesting when you know, it's difficult to get information about these ancient monuments because we don't really know much about them. We don't really understand the mentality that constructed it. Therefore, people assume that it had, you know, they assume often that it was as a burial place. It is not a burial place. It was constructed ritualistically, and the person who gave me the most interesting information was the engineer who'd been 2 years living in that structure in order to find out how they could strengthen it, you see. So every day he was inside it, and he really had a completely different vision, and he was the most interesting person to listen to because he said this place was built ritualistically. It is a construct that has nothing unnecessary in it. He said it's 100% clean. There's no rubbish. There's no little bits of wood. There's no bird feathers. There's nothing. Everything they did was with the utmost respect. And it is a temple. And it was constructed with moss from the river. First, they put moss from the river, and then they put sand, green sand. And green sand is made from the rock, Avebury, you know, from the rock they used to make the stone circles. And it's high in quartz, so it's very resonant. And then they put turfs, which is quite acidic, with the grass and the turfs. And the turfs was, first of all, the grass facing down, and then the grass facing up, and then sand, and then turfs and sand. So you've got acidic, alkaline, acidic, alkaline, acidic, alkaline. You've got a battery. That's how you make an orgone battery. It's a natural battery. And then they did the first mound, it was covered, then another mound on top, and it's very, very resonant. It's still resonant inside. You can still feel strong energy, although the vertical shaft and the horizontal shaft has taken its heart out. And none of this was kept, because it was natural things, they just chucked it. It was photographed and they chucked it. They also put the stag antlers. There were quite a lot of stag antlers, and I personally think that these were more like offering. The stag, of course, the antlers were very connected in the goddess era, in matriarchal era. So you feel a very, very strong energy when you go in there, and I think it was built to create an energy in the landscape, and it is part of Avebury, and it's very important. And this extraordinary lady shape here that you can see behind Silbury is a huge thing, because if you look at the size of Silbury Hill, it looks quite tiny by comparison. Now, this was taken by chance in, I think, 1957 by people who look after the monuments. They're not very happy about it. And they say that it's a coincidence. It's a curious coincidence that seemed to turn up every winter. They cannot accept that it could have been, I mean, how do we know? You know, we just don't know. It shouldn't be there. That's what annoys them, that it shouldn't be there. And yet we can see very well that it is a lady figure here, sitting in meditation right behind Silbury Hill. And this is a very matriarchal era, you know, when we're looking back 5,000 years ago, we are into a completely different mindset. And this is what is difficult for us, I think, is that we've been at one point completely cut off from our ancestral knowledge. I think that it was coming for many centuries, but really after the Romans, once the Druids had been killed, we were left to our own devices and we lost the knowledge, although many of the traditions have kept going, you know, and we can learn about our past knowledge just by studying traditions, but effectively we've been disconnected almost completely from the knowledge of our ancestors. First of all, it was a matriarchal time, and we just don't know what that means when you see that the earth is a goddess, a living goddess, that you can, you know, you live in her aura, effectively, and even that the whole universe was considered to have come from a female goddess, not a male god. Because the ancient and all the indigenous society now, and I've spoken to many, and I've been to visit, and I've worked with many indigenous people, there isn't one who thinks that that the universe, first of all, is dead. They don't think that. They think it's living, but they all acknowledge that everything that lives comes from a female principle. It's activated by a male principle, but it's the female that gives birth. So they see the universe as having come through a female goddess, the goddess of the beginning. And then the earth itself, because the earth gives birth to plants, to animals, to people, because she brings life forth continuously, is seen as a female goddess. And this went on to right up to 5,000 years ago, till Sumer, actually, the first king there, Gilgamesh being the first male king, brought in the patriarchal era, and then everything turned to male principle. But the very, very ancient, even more ancient 5,000 years, if we look really far back, the people on the planet Earth saw everything as being alive. You know, the planets were living, the planets were godly, everything was alive. They didn't see anything as purely mechanical and dead. And the ancient gods were, in fact, had the two aspects, were in fact both male and female. They had the two aspects into one. And it's only there became a separation between those two at some point. And now we went into the patriarchal, and now we're into the materialistic mindset here. So I feel that if we want to understand why the ancient did what they did, we have to try and reconnect a bit with their mentality. So the white horses, again, are very connected to the crop circles, or what shall I say? That's not the way to express it. I'm saying that the crop circles bring us back to these ancient monuments, because they always arrive in their vicinity, and they come every year around the white horses. So the white horses, again, is an ancient symbol that that was connected with the ancient felt that when we died, that our spirit was taken to the other realm by a horse, because the horse, like Pegasus, had the ability to go through the dimension. It could go from the earth dimension to the heaven dimension, to the gods, and it was like the bridge between the two realities, the two levels, and crop circles. Therefore, when a horse is carved on a hill, to me it indicates that these areas it's representing an area where there is a possibility to access other levels of understanding, possibly other dimension. I don't know, but there seems to be a kind of opening in this area. And interestingly, crop circles do manifest around the white horses as well as the monument. So here you can see that they do come very close to the monument, the crop circle, and they are always clustered around them like that. So even if you're not interested in the past, and many people actually in England don't know about the ancient monuments, they're not aware of it. They may know of Stonehenge, but they're not aware of like we are, of the ancient monuments. But if you're not interested in the ancient monument, and you're just fascinated by the phenomenon of the crop circle, you will be brought right next to the ancient monument. So you cannot but take an interest. And to me, I've come to the conclusion, after seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of crop circles and studying them very deeply and seriously for many years, I've come to the conclusion that part of the aim, if you like, of the phenomenon of crop circle is to bring us back to the ancient knowledge. We can't do otherwise. You know, if you go and visit a crop circle here, and there is West Kennet Long Barrow, you'd have to be pretty narrow-minded not to want to go inside and visit it. So you're brought physically to the ancient monument. I say that sometimes because I take groups of French people, quite a few groups of French people, to go and visit the crop circle. And I say they are here to bring us back to the ancient knowledge. They don't understand what I'm saying. You know, they say, why? But look, you're right here. This is ancient knowledge. This is ancient knowledge. Avebury is ancient knowledge. So perhaps one of the aim of these things is to reconnect us with the mentality of our ancestor, or reconnect us with the knowledge of our ancestors. We're the only race on the planet who's cut off from their ancestral past. Do you know that? The yellow race is very connected to the ancestors. The black race, the red race, and the white were completely cut off. And it is really here that there needs to be a change of mentality, because if you have the mentality of the ancient, the earth is completely living, is a living goddess. Everything is sacred. You tread lightly on the planet. You could not destroy the planet the way we're doing. You could not have done that in the past. In fact, they were, as far as I know, they were very free in the way. They were much, much closer to indigenous people. So they had a freedom. They lived on the land. They lived outdoors. They were connected to the season, to nature. They felt it as a living thing. They interacted. And there were very few laws. However, if you damaged the earth, that was a very serious thing to do. You know, if you did something, or start to cut tree, or did something disrespectful to the earth, there were laws against that. So it is so different from our mentality that it's quite difficult to make the bridge to that. You know, we just, the way I try to describe that is that they were as spiritual as we are materialistic. They were as inwardly as we are outwardly. And that's a huge difference, huge difference. Every indigenous person who comes here immediately recognizes the ancient monument, immediately feels the lines of energy on the ground, immediately senses the crop circle very, very, very easily. And the white race doesn't, which is quite interesting. Most people in Wiltshire who live there have never seen a crop circle. And there have been several thousand in the area. I mean, 80 a summer, 75, 80 every summer, and most people haven't seen them. It's quite interesting. I gave a lecture 2 years ago to a village. People were interested, you know, to find out about it. There were about 70 people. And I said, you know, there is a crop circle in this region. And they said, yes, yes. Have you ever seen one? No. You've never seen a crop circle? No. Oh, then they asked me, where are they? I said, well, they're everywhere. They're here, they're there, everywhere. You see them everywhere. I said, there was one next to your village. Nobody had seen it. So it is very curious. And that brings also, you know, it is interesting for me to see the reaction of people in a way that, you know, they don't see Silbury Hill as an ancient pyramid. They see Silbury Hill as a mound. They see West Kennet Long Barrow as a burial site. To me, it's not a burial site. To me, it was more like a ritualistic site, a place where people kept bones in order to contact with the ancestors. But it wasn't a place, it wasn't a communal tomb, you know. I discussed with an archaeologist recently, and I said to her, if you think because there are bones in a Long Barrow that it is a tomb, why isn't a church called a tomb? Why isn't the cathedral called a tomb? They've got dozens of skeletons in the church, under the floor, in the walls, everywhere, you know. It is a place of ritual where life and death is explored and so on. So the ancient Longbarrow were similar, were the same thing. So again, if Uffington, we have strong connection of often crop circles there. Here you've got the White Horse, the Dragon Hill, and the crop circle directly in line with it. And 2 years later, there's another one here. You can see the shadow of the previous one, again in line with the horse. We find them often in on the lines of energies where the ancient monuments were built. Now then, I'm contending that the study of crop circle brings knowledge to us, all sorts of knowledge. It's a fact. I mean, everyone who studied this phenomenon has gained knowledge one way or another. Some people have gained knowledge of geometry, knowledge of mathematics, all sorts of knowledge. But you also have a knowledge that tries to bring us back to the ancient knowledge of our ancestors. Just to give you an example, there is a Chinese person who is a Tao master. He's a doctor of natural medicine. He trained in Peking. He's completely Chinese. He moved to America when he was in his 30s, so he had the traditional upbringing, and he follows the crop circle. And he said to me that the crop circle contains all the ancient knowledge of the Chinese. That with that, he has learned how to find the currents of energy in the body, how to treat the organs. It's giving him his own knowledge. He's now creating a Tao, a new Tai Chi based on the shape of crop circles, which is very beautiful. So he sees all his traditional knowledge encoded in the crop circle. Indigenous people see all their traditional knowledge encoded in the crop circle. Every tradition will find their knowledge in there. And we also, our own tradition, you know, the earth and all that, it's all encoded in there. And it's helping us to remember that understanding that we used to have. And I think it's very important at this stage, as I'm sure everyone realizes who is here, that we are at a very critical time now where our materialistic mentality is so dangerous, has become so dangerous because we've become powerful with our technology, that we can cause serious damage. We can fish every fish in the ocean, you know. We can cut all the trees on the planet, and they are cutting extremely rapidly. We can get rid of every natural plant and replace with genetically modified organism, you know. And we are at a point where we need to change our mentality. And if we can only reconnect with what we come from, where we come from, you know, if we can reconnect with the ancient understanding of our own ancestors who revere the earth, who saw the earth as a living being, who lived in the landscape, who respected the landscape, then there is a chance. We need to change our mentality. And if we change our mentality, we will approach life differently. So I am contending that this is one of the reasons that the crop circles are here, is to give us the knowledge to go back to the earth and to start living in a way that will allow us to continue to live on this planet. Otherwise, if we carry on with our materialistic mentality and develop a technology more and more powerful, we will kill the planet. And the planet is already suffering quite seriously. So the idea of the earth as a mother is coming through. This is a crop circle. We would call that a turtle design. And the turtle, of course, in most tradition, is still the indigenous tradition, talk about the turtle as being representative of the earth. They saw the earth as a turtle swimming in the Milky Ocean. Again, here I see that as a goddess symbol, the earth goddess, or even the goddess of the beginning, I don't know, but it is definitely a goddess symbol, quite abstract. This one is much more obvious. So we are getting quite a lot of goddess symbol now. Not I don't think, in order to make us become sentimental, or what's the word I'm thinking? Not that they want us to recreate a religion based on the concept of the goddess, but to remind us that at one point people saw the earth as a living being of a female nature who gives birth to life continuously, and is therefore needs to have some respect. And again, here a little goddess symbol. We're getting more and more of these. That to me is a goddess symbol again here. That is definitely double axe. Labris symbol, with the double axe was the symbol of the god of the priestesses in goddess time. It has it's actually turned on its side here, the crop circle, but the double axes is a very well-known Labris symbol, and represents an angel as well, and a butterfly, but also a double axe, because you know the ancient, for example, the cross is a symbol of union, but it's also a symbol of religion, of course, a symbol of Jesus Christ, because he died on the cross, but it's a symbol of a religious symbol, but at the same time it is a sword. So this was the same, it represents butterfly, angel, ancient female religion, but also two axes, so there's always a negative and a positive side to it. The owl is very, very close to the goddess. It's one of the most ancient symbols. You find it in Paleolithic caves, and I'll show you in a minute. It was the symbol that represented the ability to see in the dark, the ability to go inwardly, to see in darkness. And it was associated with, they often buried people with this symbol. Last year we had it very clear that this absolutely cannot be anything else but an owl. And you see these Paleolithic vases. These were found in ancient tombs, and people were buried with these symbols. These are vases. You can put things in it. They're pots, and here you have the bones that are. So they're very, very ancient. It's a very, very ancient tradition. I would imagine that if you're buried on the ground and you have the symbol of the goddess with you, with the ability to see in darkness, with the ability to find your way through the light in the afterworld, that it would have been a comforting thing. So it is interesting to see those coming up in the crop circles. It's really quite fascinating. You can see the size of that here. See? And these were like little feathers over there. And it was explained to me by a geometer that in order to do these shapes here, you'd have to do a series of circles. Every one of these is a circle. So, geometrically speaking, it's very complex. But it is the symbol that's coming through, so it's definitely a matriarchal symbol. This, I see that as a cauldron, the symbol of a cauldron. Doesn't mean that that doesn't have other meaning, but to me that definitely looks like a cauldron. And here you have the Vesca Piscis, and you have an eye symbol as well. So the Vesca Piscis is, of course, the symbol of the female birth canal that has given birth to everything. I would compare this to cornucopia, you know. But the cauldron, in some ancient tradition, the cauldron was the magic container that always produced food. So it's related to the earth. It represents the earth that continuously gives birth to life in all its form, vegetal, animal, human. We're all the children of the earth. Spider, a spider symbol, again related to the earth. In many traditions, the spider symbol represents the goddess of the beginning, because they saw it as the spider having woven the whole of the, of the universe. So it was seen as it is a representation of the goddess of the beginning, particularly in indigenous custom. The seed of life is coming through the flower of life. We've often seen that. And this one is not very well known because it happened in London. And it happened at Kew Gardens. And it was inside the Kew Garden, in a field there. And if you visited Kew Garden, you'll know that it's right in London, but also that they have big walls, and it's all, protected, and they've got alarms and everything. And they had decided that year to take a little part of the garden in order to grow a very ancient form of wheat. And they grew it organically. So this is an ancient form of wheat grown organically, and the little seed of life appears right bang in it. And it caused a lot of distress at Kew Garden because they had read some of the newspapers, and they had possibly read some of the early books, and they felt that it probably was caused by some hedgehogs who are running around trying to mate, and they create these things. And then somebody must have put them right, because they said, no, it can't be that, but it's possibly the wind. The wind would have done this, but then somebody said, but you've got such tall walls that you couldn't have winds that would do something like that. So they then went to the last resort, which is men with planks who'd gone in there and tried to have a laugh at their expense, and that was the end of it. It was photographed only by one newspaper. We did ask I did ring them and said, would you like to, are you going to analyze the plants? Because, of course, they have all the laboratories there. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to see what happens next year. So they didn't keep samples, and they didn't analyze the plants, and they dismissed it as the work of vandals. This is the usual thing that we're having to, this is what happens. But anyway, this is the only seed of life I have ever seen in the crop circle, and it happened at Kew Garden in London. But then we have beautiful flower of life, such as this one, which was just outside of Devizes. And you can see the number of people here. You've got people there. These are people, see, with their shadows. So it was very large. And of course, the flower of life, it says it all, doesn't it? It talks about life. So my contention is that the crop circles come next to the ancient monuments. They come to the lines of energies, Avebury, Silbury, continuously in the same area. I believe that, well, I was told by some dowsers, and I believe that, who've said that since the crop circle have come, the lines of energy have increased in these areas. I did participate at scientific experiments in the early 90s, where we use an instrument to measure the line of energies, and it's easy for us to know where the crop circle come, because they seem to come mostly on the same area, Eastfield, for example. So you measure the energy of Eastfield, and then a crop circle come, and then you go and measure again, and you see a big difference. It seems first the energy goes down. It seems that the crop circle need that energy to manifest. How, I don't know. We don't know how they are made, but it is some form of projection from perhaps, I don't know, I can't say. My own feeling is that it's possibly coming from an interdimensional space, but this is only my impression, although I'm not the only one to think that. But what we see is that when the crop circle come, there is a lowering of, it is as if it needs the energy of the line to manifest. And after a few days, the energy has gone back plus. So it seems to feed the line as well. So that is what we have managed to find. So there is a very, very strong relation with they don't come any old places. They seem to need to come on lines of energies. And the best crop circle come on the biggest line, and so on and so forth. And the most powerful, the biggest, tend to come where there's a strong energy. And that's why I feel they are near the ancient monuments, because the ancient monuments are simply there because our ancestors could sense the lines of energy and wanted to mark them. They wanted to mark them in order to interact with this thing. You know, whenever they did their rituals, they put energy in. And when you go into a cathedral or whatever, you take energy yourself. It gives you energy. The same with the crop circle. When you enter a crop circle, you sense an energy. Sometimes it's so strong, that energy, that when you come out, you feel quite tired and disorientated. Many people have noticed that. So the ancient monuments were built in order to... this is a difficult subject, but my idea, my concept of it is that, and indeed, if you read many books on the subject, you will see that people feel that the monuments were built at certain places to interact with the energy. I feel myself that, you know, most of the monuments that we know now were built around 5,000, 6,000 years ago, 4,000, 6,500. During that period, from 8,000 to 3,000 years, there were many, many monuments built, many alignment, many stone alignment, stone circles, lines of stones, and in every country of the world practically. And it seems to me that they were built at that time in order to realign the planet, because after the cataclysm that the Earth has had to suffer, there are many anecdotes and legends of people of a different race coming and helping the locals to build these stone monuments in order to realign the planet, in order to realign the lines of energy so that life could continue. I once was watching the television, and it was a program about the DNA, and I'm interested in that. And the scientist was talking. So suddenly, he was explaining the DNA, and suddenly he said, 26,000 years ago, there were a massive series of cataclysm. And before that time, there were 20 different types of human DNA. And now there's only one. I was quite shocked to hear this. So what he's saying is that at a certain time, there were many different DNA on the planet of humans. Humans had different DNAs. There were different type of human beings. And now we've reduced that to one. There were many cataclysms. And after the cataclysm, the ancient ancestors and people from outside, perhaps the people who managed to survive, some of these ancient races who managed to survive some of these cataclysms, build these monuments to me in order to realign the energies of the planet. And we are at a point now where the planet is again in serious danger. We will probably have to face some pretty strong readjustment on the planet energy, and our actions are not helping. We are accelerating the destruction of the planet. We're weakening it very, very strongly with all our atomic explosion inside the Earth, in the sea, in its atmosphere. It's been dramatically damaged and weakened. And suddenly, these crop circles appear, where you may not think that there is anything in crop circles, but those of us who study this very seriously, we know that a crop circle, the plants that were hit by a crop circle that are part of the design have changed quite dramatically in their cellular structure. They become different. If you plant them, they grow differently. They're more drought resistant. They're much more tolerant. So something is happening that is changing some of our food plants. And at the same time, they always happen on these lines of energies, and we notice a difference in the line of energy. There's an increase of energy. So to me, something, somehow, somewhere, and I don't know where it's coming from, but is reactivating or is looking, nurturing, is trying to help the planet to recover, because the planet is extremely, is in a bad shape. There are some indigenous people, for example, the Kogi. You may have heard of the Kogi Indians, who call us the little brothers, and they say little brothers have been very naughty, and they are damaging the earth, and they're very distressed, they're very concerned. So I know someone who's very connected to these people, and I sent them a calendar of Crop Circle, last year's calendar, just to show them what's happening here. And I told them that these are happening next to our ancient site, the ancient sites of the white race, and perhaps they can help us to understand what these mean and what it is that, what is happening. And I got an email, and instead of, I was expecting some explanation, but of course it never works like that with indigenous people. They responded with a question. They said, "What is the nature of the land? What kind of soil is it? Has it got gold? Has it got crystals? What kind of soil is this manifesting on?" So you see, to them, they see it as a manifestation of the earth. That was the first question they gave me. So I said it is a crystalline soil. It's got a lot of green sand, which is quartz. It has flint, which is resonant, and chalk. It's a white land. And I haven't heard any more, but I'm looking forward to hear what they have to say. So to them, it is clearly, they link it directly to the earth, perhaps the consciousness of the earth, I don't know, but they have a, quite different vision of what things are about. So again, we have this flower of life is quite insistent. We do have quite a few of those. Here again, a flower of life. There's a people in here, so it gives you an idea of the size. This is opposite Stonehenge. We haven't had any crop circles opposite Stonehenge for a long time now, but this was in 2002. And it's a series of ribbons. So based on 6 here, it's very big. And again, here you see, they do bring us back to these ancient monuments, and everyone who goes in the crop circle will visit the monument. It's almost guaranteed. So I feel that, somehow we go there because we are attracted. We're attracted because they're beautiful and they are magnificent, and then we go in them, and as it is surrounded by the ancient monument, we are inevitably going to these things and experiencing them and trying to understand what they mean. What do they mean? Why are they built there? To readjust the planet, of course, but Silbury and Avebury have a lot to teach us, so we can go back to the planet now, go back to this understanding. This design came on the 7th of July 2007. And although it's on its side, you can see that there's a symbol of the goddess here with her arms upright here. And I think that, to me, that's like the Trinity, the mother, the father, and the baby, the offspring. But people called it the because it is similar to the shape of the sign. There's a very interesting story about that, because people felt, because it's 777, some people had been watching that night, feeling that maybe something would happen. And one of the 3 had brought many cameras. He had 6 cameras, all pointing to the field below, because Eastfield, as you know, if you know Crop Circle, you know that Eastfield is something every summer. So most people feel that, if they watch Eastfield, they may see something. But when you deal with Crop Circle, you're dealing with, we all feel, all of us who work with this subject, we feel that we are interacting with a consciousness. We can sense them coming, we recognize an energy, we know, we feel a consciousness, and we almost feel that they are aware of us individually. I mean, that's only a feeling, of course, but, you know, it can be strong, quite strong sometimes. So the people who were there wanted to see something happening in front of them. And of course, they arrive at 11 o'clock, and it's pretty boring when you're on top of the field in the summer, and you're mostly in this, you know, it's pitch black, you can't see anything, it's hazy, it's foggy, it's usually wet, you're freezing cold, and it's boring because nothing's happening. So they were sitting there, and they brought something to drink, they had hot drinks, they were eating, drinking, but by 3 o'clock in the morning, they'd completely forgotten about the field. And they were deep in conversation, and suddenly there's a flash of light, the whole valley lights up. The whole valley lights up for 3 milliseconds. Not even 1 second, 3 milliseconds. And we know that because it was captured on film and because you can measure the time on film. So it's like this. And that completely bewildered them. And they look around, they can't see anything. It's pitch black, and the camera, you know, it's pitch black and it's foggy and so on. And they watch, and as the sun rises, start to rise at 3:45, they begin to see, they see this design, which wasn't there at 11 o'clock. So, which in fact, when they film the valley with this infrared, is not there at 1:30, 2 o'clock, there's nothing in the field. So that we feel came with the flash.
Is it on camera?
Yes, it's on film. The flash is on film. That's how we know it's 3 seconds. So they were completely bewildered, and they went in as soon as it was light enough. Because when you try to go into a field at night, you can't see where the tram line is. It's very, very difficult to orientate yourself. So they went in when they could begin to see at least a tram line, and they entered. And I'm told that it was still crispy. It was still popping. And as we walked, it was like walking on broken glass. And it zapped them very, very, very badly afterwards. You know, you feel very good, but when you come out, you feel quite tired, so they slept for a long time. But they said it was extraordinary because the energy was still popping around. The dog who was with them ran in and started to wolf the wheat. He was eating and eating and eating, and then he was sick. He went outside and he was sick, but it did something funny to him because he was grazing the wheat. We haven't often filmed crop circle. It's happened twice, in 1996 and in 2007. So it's very rare, although there are many, many people who sit up there with cameras. And one summer, the Japanese television had set a camera to sweep the valley, to sweep the whole of the, you know, the Pusey Vale. It was just turning and filming 24 hours a day. And they did see a crop circle, but they didn't see it arrive because the camera was pointing in the wrong direction. So there is a consciousness. We're pretty certain because, you know, you watch one field happens behind you or around the corner. So there is a consciousness with us. It's difficult for us to understand that, to accept that, I think, modern people. But, you know, yeah?
If the crop circle wasn't there at 1 o'clock,
Yeah.
and it's there a few hours later,
Yeah.
okay. If we say it's man-made,
Yeah.
how many persons would you need to produce this crop circle during 1 hour, or a machine, or whatever? Questions at the end, please.
It's not, the question's at the end, but I will reply that. It's not laid down flat, a crop circle. It's just bent gently. If you press with something mechanical, you would see it. It's quite lightly pressed. The center of each circle is off-center. It's not in the middle, and sometimes quite dramatically so. So you couldn't do that by hand with that method. Do you want me to go into this, into the man-made thing? We don't see any evidence of it being man-made. There has been analysis of crop circles all over the world for many, many years, right up to 1990, from every country of the world, not every country of the world, but many countries of the world who have sent, for example, Germany, Norway, Canada, America, Mexico, many countries have had, even Israel has had crop circles and maize, and many have sent to Dr. Levingood in America to be analyzed. And what he finds is that when he looks under his microscope, he sees that the structure of the wheat has changed after the impact, and it shows signs of having been heated from the inside, a bit like a microwave would do. It doesn't just have an effect of microwave, it has other particularity, but the microwave aspect is very visible, and it shows that the plant has been heated from the inside out. So it's not something that you could do by hand on the spot there and in the time. I mean, we can also compare with the man-made formation, which we have at least one every year. There's companies like the BBC gets them, has them made. Other companies, National Geographic also each year has a crop circle made by people, and we know that the time it takes to just the preparation can take up to 6 months. I've spoken to farmers who've had crop circle made on their land. They have to have surveyors, they come and they prepare. It's a whole palaver. It takes a few days to do. When it's done at night, they use lights, it's all illuminated. So although you can do a shape on the ground by a hand, of course you can, because it is, it's a physical world. You cannot do it in the conditions that we find most of the time. And most of the time is that they happen very quickly, that they cause a dramatic change in the cellular structure of the crop itself. As well as this, we've had the soil analyzed, and the first 2 years of our group in 1995 and 1996, we organized teams and we supported the research and we collected a lot of plants. And I can tell you that just doing that would take us 2 or 3 days, and we had to do it in a scientific way. We had to follow a scientific protocol, and we had to prepare the seeds and everything else. And so we sent those to be analyzed. We also collected soil, and the soil was sent to ADAS. I don't know if you remember ADAS. ADAS was the equivalent of DEFRA a few years ago. They changed the name, actually, at some point, and it became DEFRA, but it was ADAS. So these are the laboratories that analyze plant and soil for farmers all over the country, in order to find if there is something that's wrong with the plant, or if it's got a disease or whatever. So we send them the soil, but we didn't say that they were from crop circles. Because crop circle, you say the word crop circle and people's shutters come right down, and it will influence the results. So we just said that this was from such and such a place, let's say Beckhampton. It was on the northeast part of the field, and we would give, of course, when we take our sample, we take from the plant itself and we take from the surrounding. So we go right up to 300 feet away from the crop circle. We do the same with the plants, by the way. So we take from the inside of the crop circle right up to 300 feet diameter. And then they compare the plants. And what the scientists, particularly on the wheat aspect, have said is that the energy decreases. And it has been known to go right up to as far as 300 feet away from the center of the design. So they can see that under the microscope. For the soil, we did the same thing. We took a series of samples getting away further and further away from the design, and then they compare it. And what they found with the soil is that it had completely changed its composition. It was not the same thing. Something had happened to this soil. In some cases, it's been found that the soil had extracted silica. It had created silica of the soil, which was not found in the other sample. Now, to create silica from the soil, there's 2 things that is needed. Either extreme pressure, such the passage of a glacier, or a huge input of heat. And of course, obviously, it's not a glacier that's come through the land at night. So there's a huge input of heat that changes the composition of the soil and changes the composition of the plant, the structure of the plant. However, it doesn't damage the plant because it continues to grow. It continues to produce seeds. It produces seed is quite different. So some of these seeds are quite different. I have heard last summer that some of the analysis that were done that the seeds planted from certain crop circles gave a completely different plant, which was, I don't know, I haven't seen it, but which not only looks different, but behaves completely differently. So it's not so simple as that, you know, thinking that guys with planks who go for a lark and do something, you know, coming out the pub. Can you imagine someone doing that at midnight in the middle of... This is very large. If you look at the space between the tram lines, it's 22 meters. So it's a very, very large formation, this. And it's on the hill. It goes up like that and down. So there's a lot of adjustment. In fact, I don't have that picture because I wasn't planning to talk particularly on that angle, but one of the formation at Milk Hill, which also appeared overnight, and there was someone camping on the place there who visited the field at 10 o'clock because, well, I'll tell you the story, even though I don't have the picture. Sorry, 5 minutes, okay. 5 minutes. Do you want question or story? Story. Now, at Milk Hill, this person who lived in London, who's actually a solicitor and he loves Crop Circle, decided to go, and he does sometimes, he just goes with his tent and his pack sack and his sleeping bag, and he goes and watches for crop circles at night. And so he chose Milk Hill because it's above the White Horse, and he thought he'd have a nice view. You can see as far, when you're at the top, you can see all the way to Silbury Hill. So he had that, and then he had the White Horse behind him, so he felt he was in a good position. So he arrived, set his tent up, decided to go down and visit the White Horse. And at 9:30, he went back to his tent. And as he was walking up the hill, he saw something really weird in the field. He saw a group of badgers, 4 or 5 badgers, jumping up and down like this and throwing wheat around like that. And he thought, God, this is just amazing. So he went in to walk the tram line. And of course, they ran off out of the field as fast as they could. And it's not this formation, okay, but let's say he's going up the tram line and visiting and watching that, where the crop circle happened 3 hours later. Exactly there. And that's why the badgers were running out, because animals can sense these things hours before they happen. And we've had an experience with our group a few years ago, and we went to do night watching, and because we know where the lines of energies are, and we were overlooking Eastfield, this one, we sat bang on the line of energy, and at 1:30 we heard, and it's completely dark, and we heard a stampede. We didn't know there was a herd of bullocks there. So we heard them coming towards us, and it's just with our flashlight we managed to. So they sensed it. You see, animals can sense it coming. The line of energy starts to agitate, and they sense it, and they run away as fast as they can. And we have many, many examples. We even had sheep jump fences. You know, they run off. And of course, the badgers had run off, and our friend, being a human being who can't sense anything, just walked straight in. And if he'd been caught in that maelstrom when the crop circle came, he would have been in a very, very desperate state, because we have not found any many animals in the crop circles after when we go, we haven't found dead animals except for what do you call them? Porcupines and hedgehog, okay? Because the hedgehog and the porcupine do not run away from danger. They just stay put, and they put their spines up. So they stayed put, and they got completely dehydrated, absolutely flattened, hard as there's nothing, no water left in their body. So if we were to be caught in a maelstrom like this, we wouldn't feel very good afterwards. So it's somehow there is a consciousness aware of this, and there's never been anybody. So we watch one space, it happens behind you. So they are conscious. It seems to me that they are aware of us. So there we are. I don't think that you can. I'm just going to show you a few pictures quickly. Ouroboros, some of the symbols we've had, symbols of the serpents, the seed of life, the tree of life here you can see well rooted in its roots, and all the apples. Upside down is a man standing like this, and as well as a mushroom. We've had mushrooms coming through. Mushrooms, you may wonder why we get mushrooms, because without mushrooms there's no life on the planet, because mushroom, the mycelium and the mycelia in the earth is what brings what transform the mineral to a food accessible to plants. So without that mycelia, there can be no life on the planet. And you know that modern agriculture, the chemicals destroy the mycelium. So we're very stupid humans, to be honest. And here we have these wonderful pendulums. Here again, I could tell you about this. And this is the first crop circle of this year, which was photographed by Olivier Morel, who is here today, who works for us on our group. And he was at pain to ask me to say that the conditions of photography were really poor. But there we are. We can see it. There was no light. There was no sun. It was drizzly. It was awful. But you can see it's a winged disc. It is the first crop circle of 2010, and it's right next to Old Sarum. So you can see that they do bring us to these ancient monuments, and my contention, again, I'll say that again, is that they want us to completely change our way of thinking and to reconnect to the ancient way, which is the understanding that we live in life, that everything that is around us is an expression of life. The earth is an expression of life. The earth is a living being in a living cosmos, and we need to reconnect with that feeling of reverence for the natural world if we want to continue benefiting from living here. Thank you very much.